Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hi, I'm Ruth, and you're live with me on Top Schools. Maybe you're in the Facebook page, maybe you're on YouTube, or possibly LinkedIn. We stream live every Thursday at 6 p.m. So, welcome, welcome. I have no particular agenda today. This is an Ask Me Anything. Ask me anything about international schools in Hong Kong. Ask me anything about independent schools in the UK. This is your chance. And you know me, I'm honest and yeah, maybe sometimes too honest. So I'm currently sitting in the UK. It's freezing, it's half term. I've come to visit some boarding schools, and honestly, have I frozen? Um, Hopefully you can still hear me. And it's raining and it's due for snow next week. I'm also doing some university visits. So just while I wait for you guys to warm up and ask me questions, it always takes a little bit of time. But just personally, for a moment, to share that I started Top Schools in 2012. And I started Top Schools a little bit by accident, but I definitely knew that there was a need for an expert support platform, if you like. I originally thought that Top Schools was going to be a like a forum, like this is back in 2012. Right, remember that we were still in the days of discussion boards. What did we call them? Can't remember. Um, and so I had young children in 2012, and I was looking to put them into school. And I didn't grow up in Hong Kong. I grew up in the UK, so I wasn't very familiar with the Hong Kong school system, except I kind of was. There was a little bit, I had a disadvantage maybe, in that I'd been working in the education sector, and I'd been working in a university in Hong Kong, but we did projects with local schools. So we won contracts from the Education Bureau. And so prior to becoming a parent, I used to go into local schools and observe teachers in action. So remember, I was not yet a parent. I was still relatively young, I was in my 20s. And I was sitting in these classrooms, which felt so alien to me, and watching how teachers conducted a classroom. And it was a real eye opener. And for me at the time, I was thinking that I probably this is probably not the sort of education that I wanted for my children. So fast forward a few years, my first child was born in 2005. And so I really started to look at schools in earnest. And we were looking for schools that weren't your traditional international schools. We were looking for bilingual schools because we wanted them to learn, not just learn Chinese, but really, really be able to speak, read, um, and write and listen to Chinese. So I set up Top Schools in 2012. So at the time, my daughter was what, like about 7. Um, she already was in school. And so again, fast forward, on a personal note, she's going to university next year. So as a parent and as the founder of Top Schools and as a consultant, I work with parents. Um, I've almost completed one child having gone through all of school, and that feels really, really unbelievable, to be honest, because clearly I'm still in my 20s. So if you guys got any questions for me, ask me anything. This is your chance. Ask me anything about international schools in Hong Kong or independent schools. Otherwise, I'm just waffling on with a little bit of my backstory while I wait for some questions to come in. So I was saying that I've taken one child all the way through school. So she's finishing school this year and going to university. She won't mind me saying she's actually been on a Facebook Live with me. If you scroll back into the summer, she did a Q&A with me. And people often ask, I think it's a natural curiosity that you want to know what I did with my own kids. I don't mind sharing, but what I will say is it doesn't really matter, because what I did with my kids may or may not have any bearing on what you do with your kids. So, as I always say, this is a very, very important decision that you need to make together if there are two of you. And what somebody else does with their children is what they did with their children. to be quite honest. I'm actually preparing a session, and I'm going to schedule that. I think 22nd of Feb. I'll post that up in a bit, um, on how to eliminate the noise and how to filter out the comments from friends, parents, teachers. Take the best, but leave the rest. And maybe it's not as easy. It's easy to say, but hard to do. So I'm just looking at this question that I got in our side chat yesterday. I think this was. May I know if insert random name of school? May I know if this school is good? I'm looking for a good secondary school. Should I choose school A or school B? Sent out to a group of strangers. I mean, you know, it's ludicrous. I mean, I understand that if you're going to send out a message like that, define what is good for you. Now, I take my clients through a relatively I talk one to one with all of my families to really, really understand what is good for you, because what's good for you might not be what's good for me. And we have a number of tools and exercises that, I rigorously put them to the test, because invariably somebody will say one thing and then contradict themselves 20 minutes later. And I was like, oh, hang on a minute. I've got family at the moment who are absolutely looking for bilingual schools. And we've put that to the test, and they are relatively, almost at the maximum commitment level to bilingual schools. And then guess what? Mum's at a dinner party and someone says to her, hey, HKIS is a good school. Why don't you apply there? My kids go there and they're really super happy. So mum's come running back to me and said, well, should we apply to HKIS because you didn't recommend it? Well, no, you shouldn't, because you're at almost the maximum commitment level for a bilingual school and your child's 3. So, that's the sort of thing that, that I will do relatively frequently. So, thank you, Agnes, for your question. I'll get to that in a moment. And if anyone has any other questions, please use this chance, because I will only waffle on for so long. So I was saying that I have taken a child all the way through her school. Started at 2 years old. She went to a pre-nursery. Now, she's born in November, so she repeated a grade at the wrong time, I may say. So with hindsight, that was the wrong. We didn't do everything perfectly, honestly. We made some mistakes. We did. With hindsight, I would have done a few things a bit differently. But so both my children went to, shout out for Right Mind Kindergarten in South Horizons. They went there to start their education, age 2, on the bus, in uniform, crying. We lived in North Point at the time, so I think they were on the bus for like at least 40 minutes. And then my daughter went to ISF. Then she went to VSA. Then she went to Malvern College, Hong Kong. And then she's finishing up in Malvern College, UK. So we're going to university visits next week, a little bit late, but she's got some offers and she's dead excited. So from 2012 till now. Let me get to your question, Agnes. If any of you have any other questions, this is your chance. May I ask the strategy to get into CAIS grade 5? Well, here's the thing. Let me say this. You can a strategy, I believe, we would usually say that you can apply to 3 schools and get 1. Now, to have a strategy and say, like, I want to apply to 1 school and only 1 school, and I want to get it, may or may not be realistic. Okay. Now, I don't know the background to this, Agnes, but let me take you through. If you came to me and said, is my child a good fit for CAIS? Now, I'm assuming that you mean the big school in Butterfly Valley, Lychee Cock. Maybe you could just let me know that, because there's 2 CAIS schools. So, assuming that you're looking to get into Christian Alliance International School in grade 5, I would want to know before you apply, because at the point of applying, you want to make sure that your application is going to be successful. And successful has a few different meanings. So I'll get to that in a moment. So if you asked me what's the strategy, which you've absolutely just done, thank you, and you confirm that it's in Lychee Cog. I mean, is your child going to pass the assessment? Is a big one. Now, where is your child at school now? How are they doing academically? We can do benchmarking tests for you if you're not sure. And then what are the standards? What are the requirements for CAIS grade 5? Now they're going to be, I know the school. Now you could definitely call up and speak with Maggie in the office. She's lovely, or one of her team members will very likely explain to you that it's going to be English and maths. English will be some reading comprehension and a writing task, and then a maths paper. That's pretty much what all entrance tests are, with a little bit of a variation in the fact that it might be benchmarked to a particular curriculum. So you're going to want to research, I think it's the Alberta curriculum, but they do a little bit of everything in CAIS. So is your child academically where they need to be? So that when you submit your application, it is successful in the first instance in generating an assessment, and then your child is successful in sitting for the assessment. And then you go to one of three decisions: declined, waitlisted, or accepted. So you want an accepted or waitlisted outcome. You don't want declined. If it's declined, it was the wrong school at this point in time. Okay. Another things to consider are, well, this is the main thing to consider at grade 5, to be honest. By the time a child is upper primary or secondary, most of the decision about whether they're going to accept the child is based on the child's academics, and then everything else, like what are their interests, what are their achievements outside of academics. I mean, CAIS is not a super selective school. They're not. They're relatively inclusive. So they're just going to want to make sure that your child is meeting their requirements. If so, then they look to the profile of the child. You know, they need to maintain a reasonable number. I think it's 70% of foreign passport holders, and looking at gender and background and all the rest of it. So there's no particular strategy in getting into CAIS, to be honest, Agnes. Now, if you said CIS, that's a different story. So thank you for your question. Let me know if you have a follow-up. You need to apply. Now, I'm wondering if you're asking me this question because you have applied and you have not been successful. That would be a slightly different answer. That would actually be a bit of a different question, but I hope that helps you for now, Agnes. Thank you for your question. I have another one. Let me show this one. So I can't see your name because you haven't given permission, but I'll be able to log back in later. Oh, you're going to make me do maths. July 2010. Okay, right. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to, I've got a nifty little calculator for this, and I'm going to absolutely double check my years. So I don't know what year 2 in secondary means, because you're talking about local schools, aren't you? And I don't really keep up to date with what's going on in local schools. I know it used to be 3, 3, 4. Okay, so your child born in July 2010, in international school terms, is currently in year 9 or grade 8. Okay, let me come back to your screen. What's the best time for him to go to boarding school in the UK? Not ready for him to go anytime soon. Okay, oh my goodness. And then the home fees. Okay, this is a lot. These are a lot of questions. Yeah, year 8 in the UK. Year 8. No, your child should be in year 9. But if they're in year 8, well, you've said you're not, okay, you've said you're not ready to let him, your son, you're not ready to let him go anytime soon. Um, is your son ready to go? Separate from your feelings about whether you are ready to let him go, is your son ready to go? So that's a slightly different thing to think about. The best time to go to the UK, without a doubt, is to enter in year 9. This is the main intake year for what we call senior school. So some schools have a year 7 and a year 8, but quite a lot of them don't. So year 9 is the first year, is the entry point. So that's the maximum number of spaces available, and it's the absolute best time to go. Um, the reason for that is in the UK, the system is GCSEs and then A levels. Actually, IGCSEs in independent schools and then A levels. IGCSEs is a 2-year exam course, which is year 10, 11. So going in year 9 prepares the child, is a familiar, what's the word? Acclimatizing to the whole environment, using that year to choose their options, to choose their subjects. And once they then finish their year 9, they're sort of like pre-GCSE year, they come back in year 10 and then it's serious stuff. Okay, it's academically, it depends on the school, but they need to be hitting the ground running and do year 10, year 11 is the IGCSE exams. Now, you say you're not ready for him to go anytime soon. So what you could do is plan for him to go in year 12, which is for A levels only. So that would be in year, let me just go back to, he'd be going in 2026 in September. Okay, you can absolutely, well, you can PM me for some more background information, but this is actually something I can really, really help you with to figure it all out. We can, work together to make sure your son gets into the right school. It's a little bit early now, I would say, if you're looking for year 12. Because year 12 entry is going to be very, very much based on the predicted exam grades for year 11. Again, to the last parent asking about grade 5 entry, to reiterate, upper primary, secondary school entrance is mainly based on the child's academics. So certainly for year 12 entry, it's imperative that the child is academically where they need to be. Now, there's a whole range of schools in the UK that are inclusive, or some of them are super academic, not all of them have spaces in year 12. It would be very much dependent on children leaving. So again, I reiterate, the absolute best time to send a child to the UK is year 9. I've got a couple at the moment who have just realized, and this happens all the time, they're in year 9 or year 8, year 9, and they're realizing that quite a lot of their friends are going to the UK next year. Now, they wouldn't have said anything up till now, but now is when all of the results are coming out. So now they're confidently like announcing, oh, I'm going to this school next year, blah, blah, blah. So then I get some late adopters, if you like, that say, okay, actually now we want to send our child to the UK, and they're looking for a spot this coming September. So it's still possible. It's still possible to get a space this coming September. Maybe some of the very, very selective schools, it's not possible. I know this for a fact because I'm talking to them every day. But yeah, to answer your question, generally, it's the best time to, oh, sorry, you're two different parents. I'm getting confused. The best time to send your child to UK is year 9, but your child should already be going into year 9. We should already be in year 9. So you can choose year 10. You can choose year 10, but not all of the schools will have space. And certainly at this time of the year is very, very late. So I hope that answers your question. So if anyone else has any other, oh, so let me get to the last part of your question about uni fees. Oh my goodness, this is such a can of worms. You're very welcome. Why do people like to message me? Okay. Um, uni fees. All right. Okay. Let me take this off. So you asked that you need to be in the UK for 3 years to get local university fees. Right. That's not entirely true. Local university fees in the UK um, is a can of worms. Then there are no absolutes, but there are a few things that you absolutely could do to maximize your chances of getting university fees. Now, some people will then say, "Oh, I didn't do any of those things and I still got it." And that is entirely possible. But again, we're in the business of risk management. So, in order to reduce the risk and maximize your chances, there are a few things that I would recommend that you can do. Now, in order to get local university fees, the first prerequisite is that your child must be a British citizen. Not you, but your child. Um, and then you, this idea that your child needs to be in school for 3 years in order to get university fees is actually wrong, because there's a caveat in the document. There's this massive long document that you can read from the Home Office that actually says that you need to be in the UK for 3 years as a family, like resident, all of you. If you just send your child to boarding school, and I think the terminology is for the sole purpose of education, that does not tick their box. Okay. Um, so as I said, I've just put a child all the way through and she's got offers for university, and we've got home fees. And so I've done a few of the things that I was advised to do. Now, there is a company in the UK which I can recommend to you, and I can send you the link later, um, who is the expert in this. It also depends on where you want to send your child. So, I mean, if you're looking at some of the very, very top universities, it might be an advantage to pay international fees, but that's slightly outside the scope of what you ask. Um, So you need to be resident in the UK for probably 5 years. One of the questionnaires that we got through from my daughter wanted to know for the last 5 years where she'd been at school and where we'd been living, etc., etc. So minimum 3, preferably 5. And you need to be resident in the UK. Your child needs to be ordinarily resident in the UK. So ordinarily resident of your minor child often then relates to where are the parents ordinarily resident. So that's why boarding school isn't necessarily going to work for that purpose. You need an address in the UK. You need an address that you can prove that your child has some sort of utility bills or bank account registered to that address. And you need a few other things besides. So many of you know that I've got a property business on the side, and that's what I do here in the UK. We run properties for owners that this is one of the purposes, that you can rent out your property on a short term, slightly off topic here, but you rent out your property on a short-term basis. So that's what a lot of people tend to say is Airbnb. It's obviously much more than Airbnb, but if you do that, you are retaining all of your utility bills in your own name. You're also retaining the use of the right to use the property. So again, the universities want to know that to be ordinarily resident, you've got the address, but it is not only an address, it is your actual base in the UK. So you would visit there at least a couple of times a year. And so those are some of the things that you can do. But as I said, I'm not the absolute expert on that. Sorry, that was a very, very long, convoluted answer to this question if you've just joined us. So I'm getting more questions on the yeah, I can't. Right. I think if you do you have any other questions related to international schools in Hong Kong or independent schools in the UK? I'll do a little update of the university visits that I'm doing, in case you're interested. I have no idea. Um, and then next year I've got another child going to university, so I'll be doing it 2 years on the trot, and that's a very different process. So anyway, I think we will leave it there. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Every Thursday, 6 o'clock, I'll be here, barring some catastrophe, which isn't out of the question. Um, these are available to watch on replay on our Facebook page and other places, YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, please. We're actually going to start to put out a lot more content there. March the 2nd, we have an event, and March 16th, we have an event in Hong Kong. So one of them is collaboration with the South China Morning Post, and one of them is a collaboration with the Standard. So we'll have talks, we will have a number of the schools in the room on that day. And so it's a good opportunity. And if you want to come and meet us, and also 22nd of February, I'll be running another masterclass, which I did last year. So I'm actually opening up some spots to for parents to work with me one-on-one for 2025 entry. That's preschool, primary, secondary. And so if you're potentially interested in that, you need to join our masterclass first. And then potentially we could have a chat. So thank you for your questions. And I will see you next week at the same time. Cheers.